So, I've defeated every gym leader in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and now comes the all-important final report. Who has the standout personalities that tie into their drip to create what we call a character design? Well, there's no better place to start than the beginning, so the first recommended gym leader of Paldea is Katie. As the town of Cortondo is a farming community, it's fitting that the gym leader would be one to run a homegrown business. Being the owner of a bakery, she's dressed accordingly in a chef's coat and apron that also blend into her long skirt. It's also cool that the overall colors of her outfit are more earthy, matching the woodland aesthetic of her bakery, which is built into a tree. And of course there are nice web details on her apron and gloves, the signature of her bakery no doubt inspired by the tarantula that she owns. The little details on her hat and sleeves also resemble antennae, just like the end of her hair sticking out. Overall, Katie has a motherly vibe as she's kind and welcoming and visually designed with soft round shapes. A nice way to start the victory road path. And now we go from soft and happy to thin and edgy. Brassius is our second gym leader in Paldea and he is an artist. I think when he was first revealed, he immediately stood out as a different type of grass type trainer, because we're used to seeing them as kind nature lovers. Brassius looks like he needs someone to wake him up inside. Though it's pretty cool that he isn't completely depresso and actually has a flair you would expect from an artist. His design is very edgy, like literally edgy, with thorns being a running theme. Thorn-shaped parts of his hair sticking out, thorns all over his shirt, and thorns on the whip he keeps at his side. That's a bit of a weird thing to have, though oddly enough it kind of ties everything together. I assume it's meant to be an artistic statement, but it also actually looks like a gardening hose. It's cool how his overall color scheme still reads as grass type while using colors with lower saturation that we're not used to. Each piece of clothing and his hair are just various colors of olives, you know, because he owns a Smoliv. I really need Willem Dafoe to play him in a live-action adaptation. No, she's a gym leader. Yes, the definitive YouTuber of our generation, named after an ion. So the electric theme is present through her entire design. She's very intentionally asymmetrical, I assume to represent both positive and negative charges. Each giant tail of her hair is one of two colors with a Magnemite hair clip to contrast it. These are really neat because when you first glance at her, they give off the appearance of buns that you would see in other Pokemon and anime designs. But of course they can move around, even orbiting her after she's defeated, again bringing back the Ion motif. That asymmetrical design continues to her legs too, where one is covered in a legging and the other is just there. Speaking of the legging, the hexagonal pattern on this as well as her shirt reminds me of the generic futuristic look that you would see in gamer decor or stream assets. But her hair along with her oversized jacket makes her feel larger than life, further driving home the internet influencer look. I swear she's one step away from being a live twin support card. I do like this logo on her jacket though. It looks like it would be the logo for whatever platform she streams on because it resembles YouTube's play button, but I think it's meant to be for her brand specifically, as it appears at the beginning of the whole Ionozone thing. Either way, they better be working on some real life merch of this because I would buy it. And now we move on to Kofu. Hey, where's he off to? Talk about Sigma behavior. Forget the gym challenge, he's gotta go buy some fish. And yes, this is peak Pokemon character design, a certified big man. At face value, Kofu doesn't seem like much. He's a seafood chef, of course he's wearing chef attire underneath a big apron to guard him from fish guts. But it all just works so well. He's surely a man of the sea, speaking like a sailor, and even though he's got a bald head, his facial hair is giving 110%, being white and blue to resemble waves of the ocean. Overall, his design is about as solid as his body is. So Larry is already the definitive favorite of the generation, because he is literally just a normal guy. But here's the thing, we've seen how Pokemon would design a normal guy you're not supposed to get attached to. This is Larry and he still has the Pokemon flair. Being an older working man, he has some gray hairs that just will not stay put. It's all meant to give him a non-standard silhouette. And it also hints at Staraptor's feathers, and even resembles feathers in general, hinting toward his use of flying-type Pokemon in his Elite Four team. He does also have a tie with a cloud pattern that's meant to foreshadow this, but the clouds honestly work for normal-type Pokemon as well, especially with his Komala. It has a fluffy, sleepy aesthetic. I think Larry just deserves a nice, long nap. With Rhyme being a ghost-type gym leader, they decided to go all in with the skeleton motif. There's no way you'd be able to miss the fact that her hair takes the shape of a bony skeleton arm. But the more I looked, the more bones I found. Her shoes have a rib cage pattern on the top and the front resembles a jaw with prominent canines. But I swear these are just a pair of Bionicle shoes. Very jealous. Her microphone also has a rib cage, and from a better angle you're able to see that the top is also a skull. I think her chain is supposed to look like teeth, I'm not sure though. It is interesting noticing how she is a noticeably older character, shown through the lines on her face and her gray hair. I feel that this is meant to show her as someone who started her rap career in the 90s or earlier 2000s equivalent of Pokemon. That's at least what I take from this. I just thought it was neat that the rap artist gym leader wasn't a younger character. Continuing our trend of celebrities, we have Tulip, a model who we even get to see on the advertisements in Lavencia City. I find the butterfly motif a bit odd because it doesn't look like it relates to a Pokemon in particular, but I suppose they're meant to reflect insects gathering around flowers, since flowers are seen as beautiful, and on top of that, Tulip is named after a flower, and so then that would connect to her floor dress. Though her actual dress is mostly purple for Psychic, and the frills resemble her Espathra. Also, I feel like she could be meant as being Egyptian coded with how the music of Alfornada sounds, as well as the fact that Espathra itself draws inspiration from Cleopatra. That's just my take, so I'll gladly welcome any second opinions. Either way, I think that's pretty neat. And then comes our boy Grusha. For the most part, his design seems pretty straightforward, being composed of heavy clothing appropriate for the climate. The scarf is cool with the big Pokeball at the end, and when you look at that with the coat, they're red, blue, and yellow. The colors of the Generation 1 games, minus green. But even just the scarf by itself being red and blue, that could be a reference to the Pokemon games. Of course, because Pokemon has continued the tradition of one game being a warm color and the other being a cool color. His hair is also really shiny and it looks like ice, which is nice. And that rounds out the gym leaders of Paldea pretty nicely. So let's speed through the Elite Four members and champion. I really like Rika's design. It looks like something straight out of a 90s anime with how angular it is. The very long tied back hair and type of clothing really tie it together, and speaking of tie, you can further see the triangle theme at the collar of her tie as well as her earrings and folded parts of her shirt. I think all of this is interesting because it doesn't seem to have an apparent relation to ground type, her expertise, except for the fact that she's very grounded and competent. At the very least, her green hair and gray clothing at least fits an earth theme. So when I was making the list for this video, this was the one character whose name I completely forgot, so I just wrote Stupid Baby, and I don't feel like changing that. I don't even really know what to say about this, it's a literal baby. Her clothing is gray for steel types, and the Boo Boo keys at least could give an impression of Klefki, but she has a different steel and fairy type on her team. Hassel wears the same scholarly clothing he normally does around the school, but that does assist in making him look wise. He would honestly fit right in as a teacher at Hogwarts, especially because he uses dragon type Pokemon, and his coat even has something like a cape that we see in other dragon trainers. Of course, the coat overall is green like some dragons. His sweater vest has a bit of red also, either looking like a dragon's tongue or even fire breath. You don't really see it in the video game, but in his key art here, his fingers are so long and thin. I guess because he's an art teacher and likely works with his hands, that's the reason they're so worn. It makes him look experienced. And his hair could also be meant to give the feeling of a dragon with the fact that it's layered like scales or wings, and he kind of has a tail on the back. And lastly, there's Geeta, who has a lot of hair that's meant to resemble Glimora. Her color scheme of blue and black also matches it. The gold details remind me of the details used in the promotional material for the Scarlet and Violet games. Her eyes are so interesting, almost looking unsettling, but they're supposed to look like they're glimmering like the terrestrial phenomenon. But I'm just trying to figure out what the heck is that stance. So those are my thoughts on all of the league members of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. A pretty strong bunch with some interesting outfits that I love. If there's anything I possibly missed while looking at the key art of these characters, let me know in the comments. And also let me know which ones are your favorite of the bunch. Personally, my favorites are Iono, Kofu, Larry, and Hassel. Anyway, I've had a fun time getting to meet all of these characters during my journey through Paldea, and I hope we get to see a lot more in whatever comes in the future for these games. And so those have been the gym leader character designs for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Thank you to every channel member for your continued support, especially the great Gators. Jackson, Justin R, Cosmo Zero, Michaela, Mr. Pig Puncher, Phantom Pyro, Quago, Volity, and Pastel Blood. If you'd like to support as well, get a shout out here as well as access to emotes and comments and live streams, you can become a channel member today. You can also follow me on Twitter for more memes. Anyway, this has been GatorEX, and I'll catch you all later.
그렇게 하려고? 바꿀까? 이게 좋을 것 같아. 배틀은 지금부터야. 어때? 뭐야? 나도 할래. It's time to battle. Pokemon Trading Card Game.